All right, let's talk about this another core value. I've labeled it as own mistakes. Your own mistakes. So everyone makes mistakes. We're not perfect. We're human beings. We're flawed, by nature. We learn, we go through experiences, and we, grow. We level up. Um, but there is some common pattern in the organization that I think you should be aware of. So in general, C players, in my mind, they don't own their own mistakes. They try to hide them. They don't even acknowledge that, it was their mistakes. They try to hide them or blame someone else. Very typical. I hate working with C players. You know, I don't hate C players as person, but I hate working with them, right? So, fine distinction, right? B players, they recognize mistakes and they own their mistakes, but they don't change. They don't do anything differently going forward. And they make the same mistakes over and over again, slight different variations. A players not only own mistakes, but they change who they are, or change their processes, or they change how they deal with things to improve, or at least they make great effort to do so. Very, very important. You're gonna make mistakes. So here's an interesting thing. How many mistakes are allowed when you're in a team? Are you allowed to make 3 mistakes? Are you allowed to make 5 mistakes? 10 mistakes a year? What's the right answer to that? What do you think? Come up with an answer. Come up with a number that you think genuine mistakes you're allowed to make in a year. All right. So let's spend some time talking about this. This is a really interesting question. I think I've had situations where employees were so afraid of making a mistake. Maybe the company just went through a downsize. Some of the employees were laid off because of poor performances, and everyone's so scared of making a mistake. It's understandable. We're human beings with, emotions, and, we need to support our families and things. So when things like that happen, we could be very afraid of making mistakes. So in that case, we should be careful. We don't want to make a lot of mistakes in that scenario. We want to be careful. But in general, even when things are going well, some employees are very hesitant to make mistakes. Typical patterns is they don't own a lot of responsibilities. They don't want a lot of responsibilities because they're afraid of making mistakes. They don't volunteer for projects. They don't volunteer to lead things. They do what they were told. And they do a good job on what they were told. But they don't proactively go and ask for new things because they're afraid. So notice that fear versus love concept comes back again. A lot of times we do things because of fear, but that motivation force, although extremely powerful, do not yield as powerful result for organizations or for us individuals as behaviors caused by higher power, which is love or care for the world, or love for the customers, love for the team, and so forth. So again, not owning mistakes have a strong connection, I think, in terms of the feeling of fear. Very, very well connected. Okay, so whenever you're doing things out of fear, you're doing that in a less powerful force than a higher power. Okay, still extremely powerful than many other emotions, but still there is a more powerful, more positive influence that you can lead your life than fear. Okay, not wanting to own mistakes is driven by fear. Okay, it's perfectly legitimate, and you don't want to make too many mistakes either. But how many mistakes are allowed? It's a trick question, because I would say, as a general rule for me, my perspective on this is this. So put yourself in my situation. Say that you're managing a team of 3 people. Say team member A makes no mistake a year. Team member 2 makes 3 mistakes a year. Team member C makes 10 mistakes a year. So, 0, 3, 10, let's say, is the number of mistakes ABC makes. Who would I like more? Who would you like more if you're the supervisor? Would you like someone who doesn't make a lot of mistakes? Employee A? Well, again, it's a trick question because for me, this is how I would think. Okay, but before I talk about how I would do, I would say some companies, yes, they would say employee A is better. Especially a fear-driven organization will gravitate toward employees who make less mistakes. Because on the performance evaluation, they will say, yeah, you did a lot of good things, but you made these major mistakes that costed the company a lot of money, so I'm going to deduct your performance and you're not going to get the promotion. Fear-driven organizations will do that. And if you're in a fear-driven organization, or it's in a time where fear is high and the company's kind of in that state temporarily, you may have that, right? But in an organization, hopefully that's driven to serve the customers, that's not just doing things to make money, they're not fear-driven, I would say, tell me for each of the employee how much risk each have taken, how much additional responsibilities they have taken. And for me, in an organization, being able to be being proactive, going after things, trying things, failing quickly, like learning from your mistakes is very important. That's usually important for an early stage product, early stage company. As the company matures, mistakes are way more costly, so you want to be very careful on making mistakes. But so again, it depends on the stage of the company. But if the company stage is very young, we don't have that many customers, we can make mistakes. It's much better to do things faster than do it very, very slow with no mistakes. If that's the case, again, in a high-paced startup environment, for me, even if person C made 10 mistakes, if they did 100 times more initiatives, or even 10 times more initiatives than person A, I would always go for the person C. Okay, again, depends on the stage of the company. So either the stage of the company or the project, right? You got to look and say, how expensive is each mistake? And if each mistake is not that costly, and it's that startup atmosphere where you're trying to find product or product market fit that works well, then mistakes are not costly. Speed is really important. So then you go for that. If you're part of the team where mistakes will cost you millions and millions of dollars and affect the entire organization in a negative way, and you're making 10 mistakes, oh my goodness, that's bad. So you got to look at what stage of the company you're in. But regardless of which company stage you're in, right, always own your mistakes if you make them. Again, just realize the number of mistakes you're allowed to make will depend on the company culture, will also depend on the stage of the product. So it depends. And if you're not sure, go in and talk to your supervisor and say, hey, look, I'm new. I want to be proactive. I want to contribute. I just don't know how much risk I should take or how much risk the company is comfortable with me taking on doing things that I may not have done before. I want to be proactive. I can learn. I'm hungry. I'm willing to go extra miles. Is it okay for me to try things and volunteer for opportunities where I feel like I can make a meaningful difference? Or is it, is the culture such or project such that I should be very careful and not willingly volunteer for those opportunities until I've either earned more trust or earned more experience? Can you give me some feedback or some perspective? Your supervisor will be happy, probably, to give you that thought. But if you just do it without and just guess and then make the wrong choice, that could be very costly, right? Again, that could be had. That's effective communication where you don't assume what the supervisor wants. You ask, you confirm, right? But you don't make it into a lengthy conversation where you have to send 20 messages back and forth. supervisor is not your friend, it's not your high school buddy, right? So the way to effectively do it is, again, 1 or 2 email communications should be enough, or 1 email communication with 10 to 15 meeting might be enough, and done. You don't want to waste the supervisor's brain power on needless communications back and forth where they babysit you. But they could provide that guidance and mentorship in 1 or 2 emails or meetings, right? So that's perfectly appropriate thing to do.